welcome back. This is Girl Be You, where every and anything on this channel is focused on girl and women empowerment. And I am Coach Mo. And today I want to just do a story time. So, are daddy issues real? I don't know. But in my journey, I feel my daddy issues impacted me to where I was, I guess you could say, broken. Damaged, hurt, confused, vulnerable. Yeah, so having daddy issues for me did cause a lot of my self-esteem issues, even though if you would have asked probably anybody growing up or anyone that I knew, oh no, I learned how to put on the best mask. I learned how to hide all of my feelings and emotions to the point where you would have never thought that I was so hurt and broken on the inside unless I let you get really, really close to me. So let's start off to how I got daddy issues. Probably like you, if you decided to click on this video, you might have experienced what we call daddy issues or daddy issue syndrome. And it basically, in my opinion, is the lack of a father figure in your life. More specifically, your biological father in your life, which causes some type of, mental and mental trauma, as you grow up. So for me, I was, for 7 years, thought that my father was my dad. And come to find out, I get ready to have a baby sister, a sibling. And, before my mom was pregnant, it was just me, my dad, and my mom. So I never thought about why my last name was different. As a kid, you don't question something, until someone really points it out or it's made extremely obvious to you. So, all my life going up until 7, 8, I never asked why my last name was different. It wasn't until I found out my mom was having my sister and that my sister was going to have their last name and I wouldn't. Imagine how that made me feel. And now ask yourself if you really think daddy issues are real. Imagine being 7 or 8 years old, finding out or feeling like you're the oddball of everything. Imagine going to pose to take a picture with a number of people and you go back to look at the picture, you're in it, but you can't find yourself. You're not really documented in the picture anymore. I think about, my journey and, what I've gone through. From not having my father in my life, and I really understand now that I'm older that I was really broken. I was broken, hurt, damaged, and I'm very transparent with the girls and women that I coach because you can heal from these things, but they never go away. And I like to tell people that I think people are looking for a pill to take that's going to help, just make you forget everything that could have possibly hurt you. No, you'll always remember. Something can always possibly cause a trigger, if you've been hurt before. So can you forget it? No. Can you learn to get over it? Can you learn to maneuver and be better and not let it, take control of you? Yes, that I do believe. So I knew when I started writing a lot of poetry, I started writing, my own personal journal of how I felt and, why was I so angry so quick? Why could I be ready to just want to fight so quick? What was wrong with me back then? What was causing those issues, in my youth that caused me to change from the person that I knew I was supposed to be? I'm a great person. I was not supposed to be an angry person. I wasn't supposed to, want to hurt people because I was hurt. But the saying is true. Hurt people do hurt people. So, from that, having the fact that my stepdad, and I will say stepdad, but I do want to make it very clear, that is the only daddy I know. my stepfather is my dad. But for purposes of you to understand why I'm going to talk about two different fathers, you'll understand why I say stepdad, so you'll, have it a little clearer. But my biological father was addicted to drugs and addicted to alcohol. I don't know if alcohol and drugs, but that he was addicted very bad. So my mom made the decision to, move us away, and that's how, of course, my stepfather came into my life. Now, my mom was married to my stepfather, so that was my dad. From me being a year old up until 7, 8 years old, that is the only daddy I knew at that time that was my father. I was traumatized at 7 or 8 when I found out he was my stepdad. I felt like, what do you mean? Well, do I have to listen to him anymore? Do I have to do I have to, obey him since he's not my dad? I went through that phase. And, if you're a mother and you're watching this about daddy issues and you have children, please do not assume that ignoring it or not talking about it or, yelling about it or being frustrated about it is going to help the situation, because that, I think, now that I'm older, was the worst thing that could have happened to me. It was taboo to talk about my father in my home. We were not allowed to talk about him. I was not allowed to ask questions. It even made a bigger gap in my confused self at that age. So just imagine being a child, knowing you have another daddy. Now you got a daddy that you thought was your daddy, but he's not your daddy. Now you've got a sibling coming into the world. Now everybody else around you has the same last name but you. I mean, I don't know. You tell me, should I have daddy issues? But, so when I think about, that happening and the way it was handled, and I love my mother to death, please do not get me wrong. I do feel she did the best that she could do. She protected me from a lifestyle of drugs and alcohol and abuse. So I love her. But I will say, there are ways now that, mental health counselors or someone I could have been able to talk to. It was never an option for me growing up. So you find yourself learning how to deal with things on your own, and sometimes when you don't deal with things, you are just internally breaking yourself into even smaller pieces. So I went from, being the most empowered girl growing up to always reverting back to being weak. And I say weak meaning I needed validation from everybody. I needed my dad to think I was the best student. I made sure I got the best grades. I had to be the freshman class president. I had to be sophomore vice president. I had to be the cheerleader. I had to do everything that I felt was going to get him to validate that I was good enough for him. And that's where it started. The need for validation started when I felt I didn't have the first 2 men in my life validate me. The first 2 men in my life, and I say first 2 men because my biological father, every daughter would feel that that's the first person that validates you. That's the first person that's supposed to tell you they love you. That's the first person that's supposed to tell you it's okay. I got your back. Nobody's ever gonna hurt you. So if you didn't have a dad, then I'm sure you understand what I'm talking about when you watch movies and you see a dad kiss his daughter and she's protected. You see a dad, making sure he is there and in their life. You dream about your dad walking you down the aisle when you get older. All of those things were like so clouded in my mind because I wasn't being validated. I wasn't being validated by my biological dad, and indirectly in my mind, I wasn't being validated by my stepdad either, because once again, I'm the only one in the family without the same last name. So, I do know that trauma that I felt at that age hurt me until I had my own child. When I had my own child, my life changed because I started to understand what parenthood meant. I started to understand that I didn't care by any means necessary. I was going to do whatever I needed to do to protect my child. And as I started seeing that and learning that, I started to be able to forgive my biological father. And I know you're probably like, well, why would you forgive him? I forgave him because I knew my mom took me away from him for a reason. It was to protect me. Now, not talking about the situation, that did not protect me. I feel that was where it kind of even got more muddy. But I forgave him for the lack of his presence in my life. And I remember the first time, you know, I called and I think I spoke with his sister. And I cried. I was like, I don't understand why he doesn't love me. I don't understand why, you know, he doesn't want to ever see me. You know, everybody says I look like my dad, you know. All I've ever had in my life was one picture. A picture that my grandma had to give to me, because if my mom knew I even had the picture, that would have been a whole nother story. But one picture of my dad is all I've ever had for these 43 years I've been on this earth. I feared, you know, one day getting a phone call that he was gonna be dead, and I still would have never seen him. In 2018, that happened. 2018, I finally got the phone call, you know, that your dad is gone. How do you feel? How do you process emotions for somebody that you just are so confused about? Like, this is my dad, but I couldn't even cry at that time. I couldn't process any emotions. I didn't know how to feel. Like, it was like, okay, you know, I called. But for me, of course, you know, me having now a son and a daughter, I see how important it is for a man to be in their son's life, but I see how detrimental it also is to being in your daughter's, in a little girl's life. So daddy issues are real. On this channel, we talk about girl and women empowerment, and to become empowered, we also have to talk about some of the uncomfortable things that might have caused us to lose empowerment within ourselves. Empowerment is being confident, and when you go through trials or struggles or, you know, things that hurt your self-esteem or hurt you as a girl or woman growing up, it can cause damage if A, you don't talk about it, if B, you don't, you know, recognize it, and C, you don't let it take over and defeat you. So I will be creating a video. This was just a quick story time about daddy issues. It was on my heart to talk about it because I know I'm not alone. I talk to other women who are my age and even older, and still express, you know, issues from not having that type of relationship with their fathers in their lives. Now, thank you to all the dads that have stepped up and done what biological fathers didn't do. We need you just as much, because listen, when you decide to take on a relationship with a person who has a child, please don't play with that child. You can't just break up with the person and not feel you're breaking up with the child. The child becomes a part of the whole dynamic. So yeah, that's my take on my story time about my daddy issues. So this is Coach Mo, and as I say in every video, girl, be you, because everyone else is taken. I recognized through this whole video while I was editing, and this is gonna be after I did this video, I literally moved like this throughout the whole video. So body language shows that I'm still a little uncomfortable with the conversations when I have to talk about things that have hurt me in the past, and that just means that I still have work to do myself. So sometimes you've got to be able to recognize signs or things that are happening, you know, with how you respond to things, etc. Your body language, you know, how you feel.